community Africville and as new as Kirk Johnson. In 2004, Johnson won a high-profile discrimination suit against police after being pulled over 28 times in a 3-month period for what he called driving while black. In 2006, the Black Loyalist Heritage Society was torched. And in 2007, the Black Cultural Center for Nova Scotia was firebombed and painted with racist graffiti.
It seems as though I'd walked back into time, if you will.
After living across the country, Charles Adams came back home to Halifax 17 years ago.
Nothing had really changed. Attitude stayed the same, and we're still in the same rut.
Since returning, he says he's been denied housing, had trouble getting service in some restaurants, and at work, he's a building official with the city of Halifax, complained about a fellow worker circulating racist jokes, only to have his supervisor tell him.
His first reply was that he had told him that he should watch who he passes these things along to.
Not that he shouldn't be doing it in the first place.
That's correct.
Peter Kelly is the mayor of Halifax.
Color, race, or any other element should not be a point of discrimination.
But is it?
I don't believe that it is, no.
Accurate figures are hard to get because the Human Rights Commission won't release them. But Adams says he knows of many ongoing complaints involving several different city departments, including the police and fire.
We take very seriously.
The mayor acknowledges that's true.
But isn't that, at the very least, an indication that there are some people, even amongst your own employees, that feel they are being discriminated against in the city?
The feeling part, I would concur with you that there is a feeling among some employees that they are marginalized in the workplace.
We have numerous human rights complaints against institutions in Nova Scotia, which seriously ought to tell us something about just how tolerant we are.
Dr. Carol Aylward of Dalhousie University's Law Department is writing her second book on racial intolerance in Nova Scotia, called The Mississippi of the North. As a girl growing up in rural Nova Scotia, neighbors all signed a petition asking her family to leave town because her father was black. That was 50 years ago, but she fears little has changed or will change until the denial that it exists stops.
It's difficult to address the issue when, as I say, that denial is so deep. And I'm not saying that people are racist in Nova Scotia, consciously always. Some are. And I would say the crossburners definitely were.
That's one piece that fell off.
Shane Howe would agree with that.
The message I got from that was that we don't like blacks. Get out of here. Get away. The next step, is worse.
The support from the community has helped, but they don't know if they will stay. They lock the doors and windows even during the day. There's a baseball bat by the door. They don't sleep, and they worry about the future for their children.
And that just hurts me. I fear for their future, and I do. I just do.
Red Sharon, CBC News, Hants County, Nova Scotia.
In late April, the couple's car was set on fire in a relative's driveway. And Shane Howe and Michelle Lyon said they were planning to leave the community as soon as they could. So how tolerant are we, and how big a problem is racism? The CBC's Nala Ayed decided to ask that question to people in 3 Ontario communities. And here's what she found out.
What happens when you ask Canadians a simple question about racism?
Yes, but how to talk about it is not so easy or obvious.
I think you're going to find racism all over the place. You're going to see it in the workplace. You're going to see it, in schools.
I do. I think that we are a bit more tolerant than other countries, but I do still think that it is a problem.
Some people feel that there's a problem with we're being outnumbered.
It's not as obvious as it used to be, I would say, but it's still very alive. It's sometimes a bit more subtle.
I think it's like every other country. In pockets you'll find racism, but I think we've come a long way.
When someone asks me, I will say it does exist because I've seen it.
What is the impact of racism, however the form is? What is the overall impact, do you think, on our society?
Devastating. I think that the impact of racism on our society is one that could be equated with the tremor of an earthquake.
You might say racism defined Kirk Moss. Never a theory in his world, an affliction plaguing someone else on television or in the next suburb. It's been his constant companion and all around him as he grew up from a young immigrant to a teacher in Toronto's diverse school system.
Let's look at my civics class, for example. Recently we did an interesting activity where we looked at the premier, we looked at the prime ministers, we looked at governor general. Almost 99% of those roles where power is being bestowed, where power is being demonstrated, are held by those from the dominant culture.
But the makeup of our society is changing. In 20 years, 1 in 3 Canadians will be non-white. But as those numbers grow, racism still thrives. We visited 3 communities in Ontario to find out how.
For myself, I've had people think that I don't speak English, which I was born here, so I find that really surprising.
You have to be at least 2 times as good as the other people around you, or you're not getting the job. You're not going to be placed if you're equal.
The secretary at my school once, she told me to take off my earrings because they look like planes that are about to take off.
Like when you talk to your professors sometimes, they look at you in a way like, do you really know what you're talking about when you're, like, you know, when you really want to learn?
It's frustrating because you want to be seen as a person as opposed to some idea of what people see you as.
Of all of life's hard lessons, the one about intolerance came early for Kirk Moss, at a time when he was only in high school.
Me and a group of friends, mostly black males, were crossing the street. Someone who was crossing the street as well, they said, "Get out of the way, you niggers." That's when I realized or recognized that this is a huge issue, and it's also something that is very much meant to hurt and inflict pain.
The streets have changed since then, yet Moss says racism has kept a pace, but more subtle than it used to be.
Sometimes when I go into stores, I get talked to almost 4 or 5 times. Being in one aisle, I can see someone either following the other aisles or trying to pick up where I'm at or trying to help me out. And what I mean by out is out the door.
Moss says the effect of racism on his own life is incalculable. The effect on the youth he teaches, he says, is disturbing.
I just recently conducted a survey in my classroom where I said to students, how many of you are Canadian? Everyone put their hands up. But then when I said, how many of you feel Canadian? No one put their hands up. That's quite concerning.
Sometimes it seems as though you're not allowed to feel Canadian, because if someone were to ask you, oh, where are you from? Where were you born, right? You say, well, I'm born in Canada, so I'm Canadian. And they go, oh, no, seriously, where are you from?
Moss knows where he's coming from, so he talks about it, writes about it, encourages the students and wider society to do the same. But if racism still thrives in a city where visible minorities have become the majority, will it ever cease to exist?
I think it's a responsibility for everyone in our society to recognize what racism is, to realize how it hinders us as a society, and to then move towards making our society more equitable and more inclusive of everyone, regardless of their background.
So do Canadians think they're capable of that? We asked them to tell us what should be done.
I think for the most part, starting as young as you can, with young children being exposed to people that are different than them, and not necessarily even just different races, but different cultures and disabilities and people that are different from them in any way.
I think we have to be more constructive and just say, hey, we're brothers and sisters, you know? Let's not deny history, but we're together, you know? So let's work together.
I now have a daughter-in-law whom I absolutely adore, born originally of Indian parentage. If it's love and it means integration of that nature, I'm all for it.
You know, with my kids, I think I don't use color. I don't say we're black or they're white. We're people.
Nala Ayed, CBC News, Toronto.
So just like that CBC poll suggested, for many people, racism in Canada is still a problem. But that same poll also has some good news. As the CBC's Michelle Chung reports, younger Canadians are the most colorblind.
My name is Elena. I'm European Jamaican, but I'm a Canadian.
12-year-old Elena Mondoc is indeed Canadian, and it isn't just her love of hockey or the fact she's bilingual, but she also mirrors the diversity that makes Canada what it is. CBC News sent Elena out with a flip camera to ask her friends how they see themselves and others.
Hi, I'm Princess. I'm Angolan and Portuguese, and I'm also Canadian. So, Princess, would you marry outside of your race?
Yes, because it's love that matters and not your skin color or your race.
I don't even notice if someone else is a different race, and it doesn't matter. I mean, little kids don't really notice if someone else is a different race. They just want to be friends, and they care about their personality and whether or not they get along.
So, have perceptions changed? A CBC poll indicates that Canadians, especially younger Canadians, are much more accepting of the country's multicultural makeup. In other words, we're becoming colorblind.
It does suggest that there is an intergenerational shift that's happening slowly, where there is a sense that this country is not only becoming more multicultural, but perhaps doing a little better job of accommodating that.
4 centimeters.
Elena Mondock agrees with that.
I'm Canadian, and I mean, I know that there's other things like Slovak, Jamaican, but I don't really think about that, quite honestly.
Elena's parents say it's never been an issue for them, even when Karen, of Jamaican descent, and Brett, of Slovak stock, were dating 20 years ago. But they're more aware of it when they travel.
We went into a restaurant in West Virginia, and a woman and her husband were sitting at a table with their child, and they pointed at my kids when we walked by. And I thought, that is the most bizarre thing.
Brett says their 3 kids are oblivious to perceived differences.
Their first nationality is kids, right? They just play. They don't care about religion or race or anything.
As for Elena, she says she'd like to explore her Jamaican and Slovakian roots someday, but that's not going to change who she is, Canadian.
I don't really feel like I need any more connecting. I already know who I am.
Michelle Chung, CBC News, Toronto.
And that's News in Review. Don't forget to check out our website at newsinreview.cbclearning.ca. I'm Carla Robinson. Thanks for watching. He survived a civil war in Africa and a gang war in Toronto.
Of the kids I used to hang around with, 8 of them are dead. 5 murders and 3 suicides.
Now he's an international music star.
Call me freedom, just like a waving flag.
On News in Review today, a Canadian sings for the world. Hello, I'm Carla Robinson. Imagine what it would be like growing up in a city that was called the most dangerous place in the world. A city where gangs battled each other with high-powered weapons and the government was too weak to stop them. A city called Mogadishu in a country called Somalia. The country of about 9 million people in the so-called Horn of Africa has been in an almost constant state of warfare for more than 30 years. First with its neighbor, Ethiopia, and then with itself. In 1991, a civil war broke out as rival clans battled for power. The country was left without an effective central government, and ordinary citizens were terrorized. Now imagine escaping that terror at the age of 13 and finding yourself caught up in another kind of war, a gang war in the streets of Toronto. And that would be the story of the man known as Kanon. The Somali-Canadian poet, rapper, and musician is a rising musical star these days, and he's taking his message to the world. The CBC's Adrian Arsenault caught up with Kanon while he was performing in Mexico City.
Boys, you ready? Check.
It had such a quiet beginning. And was such a simple melody, a song born of melancholy.
Call me freedom, just like a waving flag.
It's about, you know, like having been in a certain darkness or cloud, and then just kind of the moment sunlight breaks through.
I'm gonna ask you to sing with me, okay?
This is one of those things, every new bright beginning.
They'll call me freedom, just like a waving flag.
Bright new beginning indeed.
It's not far away, but for now we say, when I get older, I wanna be stronger. They'll call me freedom, just like a waving flag.
This tune, Wavin' Flag, is traveling. The creation of Canadian hip-hop artist Kanan was chosen as the global anthem for soccer's World Cup tournament in South Africa this June. Until then, the coveted World Cup trophy is on a glitzy world tour, here arriving in the heat of Guadalajara, Mexico. Where the trophy goes, so does the song. And where the song goes, Kanan usually follows.
Where are we in this? Up? We're in Mexico, right?
Oh, you're right. We're in Mexico. Do you
No,
know?
I'm saying, yeah, because I didn't know whether we're in South America. I just lost my... I thought we might be in Europe, because you're like... All right.
Forgive him his confusion. He's gone through the pages of an entire passport in a few months, as the tour has taken him to dozens of countries throughout Europe, South America, almost every nation in Africa, except the one considered too unsafe for the trophy tour. The scarred, arms-infested soil of Kanan's youth, Somalia, a land he fled as a teenager.
But what would 12-year-old Kanan do if he was standing out there in that audience and watching that?
Be relieved, I think.
And any man